that? Okay.
Give you a moment.
I got it.
I'm Hank. Hank Savin. Most of you don't know me. I'm going to change the tone of the evening. I didn't bring drama, which you guys have done so fabulously. I'm blown away by what you did. It's
Thank you.
absolutely blown away. I'm a storyteller. So, back in Russia, long, long time ago, there was a peasant. His name was Grigory Petrovich. Now, Grigory farmed a section of land that actually he didn't own. He rented it from the local wealthy barin, man who controlled all the lands. And every year he would go out and sow his seed and reap the harvest at the end and sell it. And part of that went to the barin as rent, and part of it he, of course, got the revenue from, so he could exist during the year. And one particular spring, Grigory was out sowing his field, and he ran out of seed. Halfway through, and he ran out of seed. And he went home to his wife, because what was he going to do? He said to her, I just don't know. I would have to go and borrow more seed from the barin, and we'd owe him more money at the end of the year. What can I do? And she said, well, you're going to have to ask him. And so Grigory looked at her and he said, I can't go empty-handed. I must take a gift. Tell you what, dear, let's roast a goose. So she went out in the yard and found the biggest goose out there and brought it in the house and, well, cleaned it, cooked it. And Grigory took a big basket, big goose, goes up to the house and hangs on the door. And the barin himself opened the door. And Grigory looked at him, and after stuttering a little bit, he said, well, I brought a goose for you, sir. And the barin said, I wondered why you were here. Well, come on in. And he came in, and he said, well, it's freshly roasted, and perhaps you folks should eat it now. And the barin looked at him and said, well, Grigory, there's a problem here. There are, in my home, there's myself and my wife, and my 2 sons and my 2 daughters. There are 6 people. Now, how are you going to divide this goose evenly? As a matter of fact, you should join us for dinner. And so they sat down, and the barin passed a knife to Grigory and said, now, divide it. And he looked around for just a couple of seconds, and he cut off the head of the goose, and he passed it to the barin, and he said, you are the head of this household, and as such you deserve the head of the goose. And then he cut off the rump, the back end of the goose. And he gave it to the wife, and he said, man, you sit in the house all day and direct the servants and make sure everything goes properly, so you should have the rump. And then he looked at the 2 boys, and he cut off the 2 legs of the goose, and he passed one to each, and he said, because as time goes on, you will become the men in the family, and you will be supporting your father. And he looked at the girls, and he cut off the 2 wings, each one a wing, and said, you see, when you grow up, you won't stay here. You'll fly away to new homes. And then he looked down, and he had left the entire goose. And he said, and this is left, so I'll take it for me. Well, the barin took one look, and he was a little bit upset, and then he realized how funny it was, and he laughed and laughed. And then he looked at Grigory, and he said, and now why did you really come here? And Grigory told him that he needed more wheat to sow, and he was going to have to borrow more. And the barin looked at him and said, I've enjoyed what you've done so much that I'm going to give you enough seed and a purse of coin as well. You've really lightened our day. And so Grigory went home just as pleased as could be, and went out and sowed his fields and everything, and had this extra money to live on. Well, his neighbor, Nikolai Nikolaevich, found out about it. Now, Nikolai wasn't as nice a guy as Grigory was. He didn't have a great reputation either, as a matter of fact. And he took one look at the fields over there, all sowed, and he said to his wife, well, I'm going to do him one better, and told her to roast 5 geese. 5 geese for him. And she did that, and he put them in an enormous basket, picked it up, and took it up to the barin's home and pounded on the door. Oh, and behold, the barin himself opened the door, and he said, ah, Nikolai Nikolaevich, and what can I do for you? He said, oh, I brought you a gift. I brought geese for you. He took one look at the geese and looked at Nikolai and said, well, come on in and let's all share a meal, but you have to divide these evenly amongst the 7 of us. My 6 and yourself. Nikolai looked at the basket. 5 geese. 7 people. He scratched his pate, and he pulled his chin whiskers, and he thought, and he thought. And finally, he had to say to the Bahrain, I don't know how to do it. The Bahrain said, that's all right, we'll get it fixed. And he sent one of his servants out to get Grigory. Well, Grigory came up to the house, walked in, took one look at that batch of 5 geese and the family. And he said, what? Buddy, you and your wife and 1 goose, well, that makes 3. And then he picked up another one and he looked at the boys and he said, you 2 and 1 goose, well, that makes 3 too. And then he picked up the next one and he turned and he looked and there are the 2 daughters. And he said, well, here, and you 2 and 1 goose, why, that makes 3 also. And of course, what he had left in front of him was 2 geese. And he said, and 2 geese, and why, that makes 3. Well, the Bahrain finally controlled his laughing. He was choked to death. And he looked at him and he said, Grigory, you are so wonderful. I'm going to give you 5 more bags of wheat and a large purse of coin. And Nikolai, why don't you go home? And he went home angry, and he stayed angry for many years. Thank you. And not that I'm a hog, but if we run out of people, you can do something else, can't you?